Hello, children. So today I'm going to share with you the story of three young men, a very powerful king, a huge golden statue, and a hot fiery furnace. Can anyone guess what the story is? Well, the story can be found in the book of Daniel, chapter 3. King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold statue 90 feet tall and 9 feet wide. That's like 9 stories tall. That's really tall, isn't it? And he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then he sent messages to the high officers, officials, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the provincial officials to come to the dedication of the statue he had set up. So all these officials, these VIPs, these senators, these ministers, these governors, these special assistants and special advisors, they came and they stood before the statue King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald shouted out. Now a herald is like an announcer, a town crier. He shouted, "People of all races and nations and languages, listen to the king's command. When you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all the musical instruments, bow to the ground to worship King Nebuchadnezzar's gold statue. Anyone who refuses to obey will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." Now a furnace is like a giant oven. A furnace, the heat from a furnace is enough to heat up an entire house, so that's really hot. So at the sound of the musical instruments, all the people, whatever their race or nation or language or tribe or culture or color, bowed to the ground and worshipped the gold statue that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. But some of the astrologers, now astrologers are stargazers, they read the galaxy and the stars, and in those days astrologers were very powerful because the king sought their advice. Some of these astrologers went to the king and informed on the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "Long live the king. You issued a decree requiring all people, everyone, to bow down and worship the gold statue when they hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all the musical instruments." That command also states that those who refuse to obey must be thrown into a blazing furnace. But, King, there are some Jews, 3 in particular. Their names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whom you have put in charge of the province of Babylon. They pay no attention to you, your majesty. They refuse to serve your gods and do not worship the gold statue you have set up. Oh dear. King Nebuchadnezzar flew into a rage. He was very angry. He was very, very angry. What? He ordered that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought before him. When they were brought in, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the gold statue I have set up? I will give you one more chance to bow down and worship the statue I have made. when you hear the sound of the musical instruments. But if you refuse, you will be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace, and then what God will be able to rescue you from my power. Ha ha. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. It will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if it doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue you have set up." Nebuchadnezzar was furious. He was even angrier. His face was all red. He was livid with rage. He commanded that the furnace be heated up 7 times hotter than usual. The furnace is really hot on a good day. The king said, "Make it 7 times hotter." Now that's really, 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 really hot. Then he ordered some of the strongest men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He wanted the strongest men so that when they tie the cords and bind them, it would be really tight, and to throw them into the blazing furnace. So his strong soldiers, the strongest soldiers in Nebuchadnezzar's army, tied the 3 men up and threw them into the furnace, fully dressed in their pants and turbans and robes and all their garments. And because the king in his anger demanded such a hot fire in the furnace, the flames killed the soldiers as they threw the 3 men in. It was so hot. The soldiers were outside of the furnace. They threw the men from outside, but it was so hot. The fire was burning so much that it burnt the soldiers. Wow. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, securely tied, fell into the roaring flames. You can imagine the roaring flames. You could hear the sound of the fire. But suddenly, Nebuchadnezzar jumped up in amazement and exclaimed to his advisors, "Wait a minute. Hold on. Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the furnace?" "Oh, yes, your majesty, we certainly did," they replied. "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouted. "I see 4 men, unbound, walking around in the fire, unharmed. And the fourth, it looks like a god." Then Nebuchadnezzar came as close as he could to the door of the flaming furnace. He didn't want to go too close because, remember, the furnace was so hot, it burned the soldiers. So Nebuchadnezzar was cautious. He went as close as he could and he shouted out, "Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego stepped out of the fire. Then the high officers, officials, the governors, and advisors, they crowded around them and saw that the fire had not touched them. Not a hair on their heads was singed, and their clothing was not scorched. They didn't even smell of smoke. That's amazing. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make this new command. If any people, whatever their race or nation or language, speak a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be turned limb from limb, and their houses will be turned into heaps of rubble. There is no other God who can rescue like this. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. Now that's the end of the story of the three young men, the very powerful king, the giant gold statue, and the hot fiery furnace. Now I want to ask you a question. Who do you think the fourth man in the furnace was? If you want to have a guess, why don't you share it with your mom or dad or brother or sister or anyone else there with you? Thank you for listening to the story. Goodbye. Hello, children. So today I'm going to share with you the story of three young men, a very powerful king, a huge golden statue, and a hot fiery furnace. Can anyone guess what the story is? Well, the story